far-left interest groups. And I mean that literally. A recent Axios article reported, and I quote, "Progressive grassroots groups are blasting congressional Democrats on speed dial to hold the line in any negotiations to reopen the government," end quote. Now that followed an Axios report that found, and I quote again, "Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and his staff are closely coordinating their government shutdown strategy with outside liberal groups. Backing down and helping fund the government like Schumer did in March is unacceptable," the groups have told his team, end quote. Backing down and helping fund the government like Schumer did in March is unacceptable, the groups have told his team, end quote. And so the liberal groups say, jump, and Democrat leaders say, how high? Forget the robust majority of independents who want Democrats to end this shutdown. You know, Mr. President, back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean as recently as 6 months ago, the Democrat leader was a pretty passionate opponent of government shutdowns. Yeah, he was an opponent. So much so that even though he didn't like the continuing resolution we passed in the spring, he voted for it anyway because in his words, and again I quote, "A government shutdown would be far worse," end quote. But then progressive groups got big time mad. And now the Democrat leader is leading the charge to keep the government shut down indefinitely, apparently. And all those federal workers and hardworking Americans he was so worried about before seem to have just slipped his mind. In fact, Democrats have barely reacted to the fact that federal workers are going to start missing pay. Mr. President, when we realized that we were going to need a continuing resolution to allow us more time to complete the fiscal year 2026 appropriations bills, Republicans wanted to do everything we could to ensure that there was no government shutdown, which is why we put forward a clean, continuing resolution with no Republican policies or partisan policy riders. We knew a shutdown would be costly and disruptive for hardworking Americans, and we were determined to ensure the Democrats had no reason to oppose our CR. But Democrats weren't deterred by the fact that there was nothing for them to object to in our bill, and they decided to oppose it anyway. Now, Mr. President, Democrats will get another chance this week to vote to keep the government open. And I hope that the Democrat leader and Democrat senators can summon up some of that concern they used to have about shutdowns and vote to reopen the government. At the very least, if the Democrat leader is too worried about his polling to vote to reopen himself, he could allow Democrat senators who do care about the functioning of our government to join Republicans to reopen. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I understand that there is a bill at the desk that's due for a second reading.
The clerk will read the title of the bill for the second time.
S-2983, a bill to reauthorize the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015.
Mr. President, in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding.
Objections heard. The bill will be placed on the calendar.
Mr. President.
Majority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, following up with what the Majority Leader just said, I have here the Washington Post from this morning, and they have an editorial. And what they have in bold print, it says, Democratic leaders play a dangerous game. That's what the Democrats are doing. We just heard the Majority Leader talk about what we're trying to do, what we're facing, how Chuck Schumer is being held hostage by the liberal groups who set up the war room with him. And what we see is a dangerous game being played and threats to the American people. This goes on to say there is a clean funding bill on the table. This is the Washington Post, Mr. President, this morning. There is a clean funding bill on the table. Only a handful of Senate Democrats need to vote for it. Instead, the Majority Leader is leading the Minority Leader is leading the Democrat Party into a box canyon. Can't get out. And it's a dangerous game, and it's not just dangerous for them, it's dangerous for the American people. That's where the danger lies. So I come to the floor, Mr. President, because the American people are facing an immediate crisis. And they know why. Anybody watching knows why. It's because Senate Democrats have now voted 5 times against a clean, bipartisan, continuing resolution that would open the government today. This is day 8 of the Schumer shutdown. Day 8. Country is held hostage by the Democrats, and they're playing a dangerous game. This isn't a game, Mr. President, but that's what the Democrats have turned it into. So the question before us is simple. What have the Democrats accomplished during this dangerous game that they're playing? October 10th, on Friday, in 2 days, Border Patrol agents and other federal workers will receive only half a paycheck. That's the result of the Democrats' dangerous game. It'll be their last paycheck until and at least the Schumer shutdown ends. Democrats vote to reopen the government. They could do it today. House of Representatives passed a clean continuing resolution, current funding levels. Democrats voted 13 times under Joe Biden for a continuous resolution to keep the government funded. Continuing resolution funds our military, pays for law enforcement, continues food assistance for moms and young children, keeps small business loans flowing. 13 times they voted for this. Now they reject it because they want to please their radical extreme base, the base that has put up a war room that Chuck Schumer has bowed down to. That's what we've just heard from the majority leader, that they're the ones calling the shots. And that's why we find ourselves in this situation. Democrats are demanding radical new policies before they allow the government to reopen. I've seen their demand letter, $1.5 trillion in new expenses, as the majority leader just outlined here on the floor. Their ransom note is filled with liberal policies. I look at it, it is stitched together like Frankenstein's monster. $1.5 trillion in reckless new spending, free health care for non-citizens, free Medicaid for working-aged, able-bodied adults who refuse to work. There are over 5 million of these individuals in the United States, and yet they refuse to work. And the Democrats want them to all get free Medicaid. $50 billion the Democrats want to cut from vulnerable rural hospitals, hospitals in rural communities. Do the Democrats not care at all about those communities? Even though there are rural communities in their states, they are beholden to the big cities and the mayors, the sanctuary cities that control the Democrat Party. That's what we're dealing with here. That's why the Washington Post calls what the Democrats are doing, as I pick it up again, Mr. President, a dangerous game. They're holding the American people hostage to extract far left-wing concessions. They're telling our service members their paychecks are negotiable. They're telling small businesses their dreams are collateral damage in a partisan fight. They're telling mothers and young children that WIC benefits are leverage for the far left demands of health care for non-citizens. Republicans remain committed to ensuring families receive the support they deserve. The Democrats have chosen repeatedly to keep the government closed for political purposes only. American families are feeling the pain nationwide. In Georgia, more than 100,000 federal employees are wondering where they will find the money to pay their bills and buy their groceries. In Arizona, 344,000 children enrolled in SNAP face uncertainty. The benefits are running out. Time is of the essence. Shutdown Democrats are telling these families problems aren't urgent. Well, they're urgent to those families, and the Democrats don't seem to care. In New York, almost 500,000 individuals who rely on WIC will lose access at the end of this week. It's already Wednesday. We're talking about pregnant women. We're talking about new mothers. We're talking about young children. They depend on this program. In Illinois, every week the shutdown continues. It costs the state's economy over $500 million. That's jobs lost, paychecks missed, opportunities evaporated. In Michigan, small businesses face delays of $92 million in loans because the Small Business Administration is frozen due to the shutdown. These businesses are the backbones of our communities and our economy. They should be able to make payroll, keep their doors open, not as the Democrats continue to play what has been termed a dangerous game. In Nevada, for each month the shutdown continues, consumer spending from lost wages will fall by over $200 million. It's money that won't flow into local businesses, won't pay rent, won't put food on the table. In New Jersey, telehealth programs are on hold. I'm a doctor. Without these programs, patients could be put at greater risk. In New Hampshire, workers maintaining our nuclear attack submarines, they face furloughs and unpaid work. Look, this goes beyond missing a paycheck. This is about national security. The Schumer shutdown, the dangerous game that he is playing, puts America's safety at risk. At airports nationwide, we are already seeing the direct effects of the shutdown. Flights are being delayed, security lines are growing longer. Even the head of the Teamsters Union, Sean O'Brien, says that Democrats' political theater is something he can see right through. He says a shutdown will hurt working people, period. American workers are not a bargaining chip. That's the leader of the Teamsters Union, Mr. President. He goes on to say, senators should stop screwing around and pass the House-passed clean short-term funding bill. That's where we are today. He's right. But regrettably, Senate Democrats are treating the American people as bargaining chips, as hostages, and that's why they sent the list of demands as ransom. Democrats have now voted 5 times against opening the government, 5 times against supporting our military, 5 times against paying law enforcement officers, 5 times against food assistance for women and infants and children, 5 times against the small business loans that help Main Street. 5 times Democrats have looked at the mounting damage of the Schumer shutdown and shrugged their shoulders. That's the situation we have today. The American people overwhelmingly say Democrats should pass a clean continuing resolution and end the shutdown immediately. There is a clean bipartisan resolution before the Senate, ready for a vote right now. It reopens the government today. It would protect the paychecks and the programs the American people depend upon. It would end the uncertainty that is gripping millions of American families. The question is not whether the Democrats can end the shutdown. It's will they have the integrity to do it, or will they continue to play this dangerous game with our nation and with our families. And, Mr. President, on a separate matter, before Senate Democrats shut down the federal government, they shut down the very Senate floor on which I stand. And they did it by freezing the confirmation process. For months, their blockade created a growing backlog of qualified nominees, so many of which have come out of committees with bipartisan votes. Nominees for positions that during prior administration sailed through the Senate by unanimous consent or by voice vote. But not with this Democrat minority. Oh, no. So in September, Senate Republicans broke the blockade. And now the blockade is being cleared. At the peak of the Democrat obstruction, more than 150 well-qualified nominees approved by Senate committees were waiting for a vote on the Senate floor. Yesterday, Mr. President, we confirmed 107 of those nominees, and we did it in a group. This is one of the largest confirmations in the history of the United States. Now there are only 26 nominees on the executive calendar. Our committees are hard at work to approve more nominees, and we're going to confirm them in short order. As of this morning, President Trump has had 298 nominees confirmed in his second term. By comparison, at this point, Joe Biden had confirmed only 201 in his first and only term. President Trump had confirmed only 183 nominees at the same time in his first term. So the Senate's constitutional duty of advise and consent is now back. President Trump now has his team confirmed and ready to be sworn in. From assistant secretaries to ambassadors, United States attorneys, the federal government is better positioned today to keep our nation safe and secure and prosperous. Senate Republicans are going to continue to work to get America back on track, no matter what obstacles the Democrats continue to throw in our path. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Minority Whip.
Mr. President, I came to the floor a few minutes after Senator Thune, the Republican leader, spoke, and I missed part of his statement, but I think I heard most of it. I listened carefully to the statement by the senator from Wyoming, and let me say at the outset that I consider them both to be friends. We disagree on many things politically, but over the years I've come to work with both of them and look forward to doing that again someday. I was disappointed in both of their statements because of what was not said. How can you talk about the government shutdown without ever mentioning health care costs to American families? How can you do that? I mean, it's a situation where we understand, I hope, that the Democrats are not in this position for any reason other than to stop the dramatic increase in health care premiums that American families will face unless we do something and do it now. State after state, the notices are going out that the cost of health insurance for working families in America is going to go up dramatically, in some cases more than 100%. And that is going to be hurtful to many. They'll have to look for different health insurance plans that they can afford, which means more money out of pocket, or they're going to drop their health insurance coverage altogether. How can the Republican leaders stand before us and even refuse to acknowledge that that is the issue that drives this government shutdown? The Republicans are insisting on their approach to the budget because they don't want to see American families protected when it comes to these health insurance increases. And the increases are already being announced. 10 states so far have announced them. October 27th is the magic date, if you will, for the announcement in my state of Illinois. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to hear from hundreds, if not thousands, of families across my state that increasing the costs for families is creating a hardship they never anticipated. We believe on the Democratic side, this is the time to act now, to move together to stop these increases from taking place, because these increases were part of the big, beautiful Republican budget. The Trump budget, voted for by every Republican senator and no Democratic senators. The Trump budget, which of course he signed into law, that's what's leading to these increases, because the plans, the Affordable Care Act insurance plans, are no longer going to enjoy a subsidy, a tax credit, to help families pay the premiums, and that's why the cost is going to go up so dramatically. We can change it. We can do it, but we have to do it quickly. We ought to move on it this week. I wish the House of Representatives were in session. They haven't shown up for 2 weeks. Speaker Johnson happens to believe that being AWOL is the right thing for his Republican members. I don't think it's the right thing for America. Democrats and Republicans should be in this Capitol negotiating, sitting at a table together. And the first item on the agenda has to be health care costs for American families. All this talk about dangerous game and radical left policies and managements, it is not a radical left idea that a working family ought to have affordable health insurance. It is basic in America. As flawed as our health system is in this country, and as great as it is in many respects, if people cannot afford to have their coverage for their family, then hardship, it follows. That's the real reason.